One of the things that I thought was really interesting about this was the whole community versus company thing, and how this isn't really building a productivity tool for a company, it's building a productivity tool for a community, which is a little bit different, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think because of there's a less rigid structure, and probably the value that these people are getting out is not a monetary one. So there's a very, it's funny because the definition for betterment on Wikipedia is improvements done to the neighborhood that don't necessarily cost money, but affect the wealth of the neighborhood. So they don't necessarily increase property values, but they make the place that you live in better. So I think that there's a reward there that's not necessarily financial, which is really interesting in these community contexts.
Yeah, because like at a company, there's a really obvious reason, like why we work together, right? And there's a thing that binds us together, which is this money aspect. Yeah, you ask me to do something, I'll do it because I'm getting paid to do it. But if you're asking people to do something and you're not paying them to do it, how do you get them to actually follow through on a commitment?
Hmm.
You see this in philanthropy a lot. And then if you sort of add the idea that it's not a group that's all sitting together in one room every day, it's a group that's sort of distributed and spread out amongst a bunch of different spaces and may only see each other once a week or once a month. We don't have those same social tensions in person, like
Hmm.
tying us together.
Hmm. Yeah, so it's about tying those people together as well. Like, it's easy to think that these communities are uh, volunteer based, but the trickier problem is how do we all both make a living off of this stuff and give more back than we're being financially rewarded to. So one of the guys from Public says, if everybody's going to be working on betterment work, then people are going to have to be paid for it. And so the real trick of it is how do we put these social capital rewards or incentives on stuff, but also have an integrated financial stability or financial incentives as well.
Without really confusing the two, right? Like there's that whole Clay Shirky thing where he talks about the story of that community where as soon as the financial rewards were connected to the social rewards or the reward of just doing something because it felt good, it completely destroys the social capital in the
The
system.
daycare thing.
I was thinking of the one. It's like the people are given a task to do as an experiment, like groups of students, and like one group goes in and they're said, "Hey, use this thing. Try to get as many combinations as you can." And they watch them for a few minutes and then they leave, right?
Hmm.
And then the real experiment is after they leave, who keeps playing, right? Like who keeps doing it? And the
Right.
ones who get paid stop immediately. They don't try any harder, and the ones who are just doing it for fun keep doing it, right? They try to get more combinations.
Between that social value and that financial value is really tricky because we tend to think in a financial way when we're buying stuff and a really social way when we're giving things. So, yeah, another example is that daycare where the parents were coming in too late and they decided to put a $2 charge on if you don't pick your kid up on time. And the parents turned around and said, "Oh, that's great, $2. Yeah, take care of my kid for an extra 15 minutes. I'll pay $2." And so they had to increase it to $20, right? And then people get a little bit annoyed. But the question is, what is that translation of value? And like you're saying, maybe it's a tricky one that you should just keep those two things in silos. So let's talk about the human factor in this, because it seems everybody's on about social technology and really social innovation, and both of those things are just the overlap between humans and technology, or humans and science, and really that's design. So uh, the human factor seems to be a big driver in our work. Why don't we talk about that?
Yeah, I guess for this especially, it's listening and trying to figure out how to enable the people to talk to each other, how to get them to be able to help each other out, tell each other what to do, um, ask each other for help, share each other's success stories, all these things that are, especially for this project, that's deeply social, um, sort of like commodities or transactions, I guess. Those seem to be the big ones for this one.
And so the funny thing about this one is it has a lot to do with what we've been thinking about, which is distributed organizations, porous institutions where people can come in and out, but that there is something holding them all together. So maybe in this case it's a community identity, and it's definitely a physical location. So yeah, I mean, one thing that GYC is struggling with is this notion of poaching. So they get their best talent poached because they're so good, actually. and how do they maintain that organizational knowledge without being an institution? So it seems like we're going to butt up against this more and more as people move and have mobility, but also that they have a lot of options on which organizations they can be in.
Yeah, this one, like, there's something, this new space, right, between organization and sort of individual, or, you know, this mix between philanthropy and it's kind of like a company, kind of like a nonprofit.
Social enterprise.
Social enterprise, bunch of stuff sort of shoved together all at once, you know? And without all those traditional organizational structures in there, how do these people organize? And if they're not in the same room all the time, and they're not getting paid for it all the time, then there's this thing that's missing, right? Like, traditionally space was the organizer, or a hierarchy was the organizer, right? So there's this real need for some sort of tool to fill that space, to allow people to self-organize and self-direct the entire group in a way.
Right. It seems that, like, the previous ones that you mentioned, space or location, and hierarchy, are both human technologies, and it's, you know, naturally the internet is a human technology as well. And so does it make some of those previous ideas of hierarchy and needing to be in the same location, does it make those technologies obsolete?
Well, even if it does, it's like, it doesn't matter because they're already doing it, right? They're not doing it that well, or they're not doing it up to the potential they know they could. So the problem is, come in and make it work as well as a hierarchy does, right? For this particular thing.
Yeah, and so we can talk about technology, and even space or hierarchy, like you mentioned, is a technology. So that's the tool, really, for doing this stuff. But the question around the tool, or the space or hierarchy, is it's encouraging a certain behavior. So, you know, taking the perspective that a hierarchy encourages a behavior of responsibility and accountability, as well as, you know, taking care of your own responsibilities. So maybe we can talk a little bit about what types of behaviors we'd like to encourage, or that notion of behavior.
I think encouraging leadership is a big one. Just encouraging and empowering people to be able to lead, or to be able to follow a leader to actually complete a particular type of task, feels like a really big one to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, our friend talks about parallel leadership, right?
Yeah, big time.
So maybe it's this idea that multiple leaders at multiple times, when people can pick stuff up, they can, and really rewarding people. So, you know, profiling them or showing them off and saying, hey, that was a really good job.
Yeah, totally. You know, rewarding people for actually, you know, taking initiative. And in an organization where you don't have a hierarchy and there's no one at the top who points down at everyone else and says, here, you tell these people what to do, and those people then tell these people what to do, and then under them some people actually do it, you need to encourage everybody to get out there and just start doing stuff on their own, you know. Mm-hmm. And when you're all working together in some sort of concerted way, and there's enough overlap between what you're doing together, hopefully the outcome's a lot better.
Right, so it's really setting that initial stage, that initial value, or that initial, you know, driving passion or driving principles of the organization. I think they've done a good job of that so far.
Yeah, and now it's a matter of us being able to take those principles, distill them, find the actions that equate well to those principles, and then allow people to be able to complete those actions better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so we do that through looking at the behavior and making this tool. But then the third factor is this campaign. So we know that these people are not necessarily using technology to its advantage or appropriately. A lot of the stuff happens in email. And the question is, how do we get them to this new behavior and using this new tool? And that's really about a campaign from a traditional advertising sense. But it's interesting to think about that in your context of mobilizing those people to do that campaign themselves, rather than